big questions on the Bumper to Bumper program, and I want to start a very special Tuesday edition with one of those. I think it's a timely one. I think we can have some fun with it, and I think we can get some decent response to it as well. We'll be here until, I'm assuming, 6:30 tonight, or is it an extended pregame? We're out at 6?
No, I don't think we're out at 6.
Well, there should be an extended pregame. It's the pivotal Game 5 Stanley Cup first-round playoffs, correct?
That is what's happening tonight, yeah.
Okay.
Now, I'm looking over to the left at the calendar we always have, and it's just gone. It's just empty.
It's
just an empty bulletin board.
What is that? That's ominous.
I know. Not planning for tomorrow, I guess.
All on borrowed time?
Maybe.
I guess we all are. That's the cliche goes. What was the name of the book? World According to Garp. We are all terminal cases. It's true.
It's true. We're all
look at it that way, but that's the reality of it. We'll assume we're going till 6:30 until otherwise notified. And I think this question can sustain us through much of a very busy program that will include uglydeck.com visits with Kevin Seifert in studio in about 13 minutes. Wes Walls by phone at 4:02, and I'm presuming by phone as well, Johnny Athletic at 5:30. Fresh back off the plane, I'm guessing, from Denver, Colorado. He was there to chronicle the Wolves Game 5 loss to Denver, with Game 6 scheduled for Thursday. Do we have a time established yet?
We do not. It will be 8 or 8:30, depending on what happens with Portland and San Antonio Davy, their game tonight. If San Antonio wins and that series is over, as I understand it,
we'll be on at 8?
We'll be on at 8:30.
Oh, yeah, otherwise we're going to be at there. Portland's not going to extend that series now. Isn't that game in San Antonio, Davy?
It is, and if they do extend it,
it'd be 8.
We'll be at 8, and there'll be a third network
8
involved.
And change, I see.
Mm-hmm.
I gotcha.
So there you go. That's what I know.
Here's my question. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line will be rebooted shortly to get answers to it. 64686. What, in your minds, is more likely to happen? What has a better chance of happening? The Minnesota Wild winning 2 games out of the next 3.
Oh, boy.
To advance to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time in forever. Or the Minnesota Timberwolves down 2 significant players, winning 1 game to advance to the second round of the tournament. You can ask it a lot of different ways. Which are you more confident is going to happen? Now, both could. I'm not here to say the answer is can't be both, but I'm not looking for both. I'm looking for one you feel better about in your bone marrow right now. And what's interesting is, what I think makes this an interesting proposition to me is the Stars, I should say the Wild, need 2 victories. But they're healthy, getting healthier. Because we think Zuccarello is going to play tonight. Has that yet been made official?
I don't know about official, but everybody
seems to be saying it's headed that way. And meanwhile, of course, the Wolves' injury issues are well chronicled. They're down 2 starters, including their superstar guard, Anthony Edwards. Yet they only need 1, and they have a chance to end this thing Thursday night at either 8, starting at either 8 or 8:30. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open at 64686. I think I know which way I lean right now, but I'm curious to get other people's opinion on this very controversial issue. There's a part of me, again, that just likes that they're both in position to advance. Neither has yet, but they are both in position to do so. And we've talked about it. A history would be made if they both find a way to advance to the next round. And I want to believe that if the Wolves find a way, that Anthony Edwards will also find a way to make himself part of the second round against the San Antonio Spurs, Davey. That might be a pipe dream on my part, might be wishful thinking on my part, but that's what my gut tells me. Now, will he be there at the start of the series? Probably not. Well, definitely not. Would it matter Are the Spurs that dominant at this point? Who's to say? It's possible that they are. But if I put the question to you the way I have, do you have a lean? Which outcome are you more confident in taking place?
Man, I'm trying to think about it on the fly.
Yeah, it's hard.
I think I lean Wild.
You do? Interesting.
I think I lean Wild, but that might be just protecting myself from my Wolves fandom for tomorrow night. I don't, by the way, think that if the Wolves lose on Thursday, I don't think it's a wrap.
Game, set, match?
I don't think it's a wrap that they can't go back to Denver and win like so many other people do. So I think I lean Wild, though, because I just don't know if the Wolves will be able to figure it out, how they're going to play without those guys, specifically Ant. But it's like 52-48. It's not a strong lean.
It's very close.
It's a one shoulder against the wall lean. It's not a leaning Tower of Pisa situation.
Well, I think that's fair, and I didn't give you any chance to think about it because we don't have pre-production meetings very often. But I know you can think on your feet, and so I wasn't concerned about that. I, frankly, haven't thought about it more than about a half hour when I thought this might be a good way to start the program. And we're accused of agreeing too much. I lean Wolves. I actually lean Minnesota Timberwolves, and I might be kidding myself on that after what we saw last night in Denver. But I will say that I didn't... It's convenient for the Wolves players to say what they did after the game. I don't doubt that. I agree with that. I understand people wondering about that because what are they saying? It's not anything they did. It's what we did.
It's true.
But to be honest with you, I thought that was correct. Now, the question is whether the Wolves can, in time, do anything about the things they did badly, offensively, in game number 5. That's an open question. But I actually am more confident that the Wolves can get one, as decimated by injury as they are, than that the Wild are going to get 2, healthier, getting healthier by the minute, and having, of course, the opportunity to take control of the series, one could say, if they could steal Game 5 today, and then the theory would be you come home and you wrap things up, you don't have to worry about making another trip to Dallas. But I am curious to hear from the audience at large.
From both communities.
From both
the basketball and hockey communities.
And that's the problem here, too. This is where it gets tricky because I don't know. There's these built-in petty biases, as we've learned, as we've been reminded again and again, about, within the hockey community about basketball and the basketball community about hockey, Johnny Athletic. So are you going to give honest answers, or is your answer going to have something to do with, which sport you like better? Which direction are you going to lean on just that basis? I'm hoping we have folks who can rise above that, but I'll take all of them under consideration. Now, there is, of course, the nightmare scenario is the correct answer is not both. It's not one of them. It's neither.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Very, very easily.
Let's remember something. The Wolves were double-digit underdogs last night. They are, at last check, I think, 5.5-point underdogs for Thursday's game. That may shift a little, but they're decided underdogs at home Thursday, and if there's a Game 7, they'd probably be double-digit underdogs again, right? The Wild, I don't even know. I'm assuming we're underdogs tonight. I'm not sure how it's worked on home games. Overall, before the series began, the Stars were I thought they were a slight favorite over us. Or is that giving the Wild too much credit? Was it more than slight for the series?
Yeah, I feel like it's a little much credit.
So I don't know. I don't know how that part will go. And I was bewildered. The part that I didn't quite understand from a Wolves standpoint. Well, we talked about it yesterday. The issue is going to be, your offense is going to struggle, relatively speaking, realistically, on the road in that situation. So therefore, can you continue to harass Denver's offense? And unfortunately, Denver got its offense untracked enough in a way we have it longer than we have seen. How much of that started with the foul trouble on Jaden, I don't know, but that was part of the reality. And then offensively, was it 10 turnovers in the first quarter?
Yeah, something like that. And 25 for the game.
Again, I mean, we have still, even without Edwards and without Dante, we have still enough part-time ball handlers that the casual nature of the passes, that's what would have driven me crazy if I'm Finchy. It's not, if you lose straight up, you lose straight up because you are outmanned at this point. But when you lose the way you lose, they did. I heard only part of what he said after the game, and I don't know if he went philosophical on the bit or was critical, or how would you describe his tone after the game? We'll talk to Johnny about that at 5:30.
Yeah, kind of like he didn't like he thought they were a step slow to start. He thought they weren't very good around the rim. He thought guys were trying to do too much and not just take the easy stuff. But the casualness of it from a lot of different guys, Rudy included, another behind-the-back pass for no reason that ended in a pick six. Naz Reid comes right out, throws a bad pass. Like, everybody kind of had a hand in it.
Yeah, that is it. And I don't think we ran as much as I wanted us to or expected we would try.
Got to get stops.
That is part of it.
You got to get stops if you want to do that.
I'm going Wolves. Home crowd will get them there tomorrow night. That's, of course, what they're hoping. Yep. I don't have a side, but shouldn't we all be cheering for the Wild a bit more? I'm a championship or bust fan. Doesn't feel like the Wolves have a chance. That's an interesting observation. That's another subject, perhaps, for another day. Keep the texts coming. Maybe we'll get Kevin Seifert's view on this. I don't know. Seifert is what I like to call a subtle agitator. I don't know if he's ever weighed in on the hockey versus basketball rivalry stuff that has become a big part of this show in recent weeks, if not years. And eventually I do want to talk some Vikings with him, take one last look back at the draft like we did with Alec Lewis by phone yesterday, get caught up on a couple of things that Seifert has written, more on the GM search, more on my belief that this trade does not sit well for me, even though I know all the permutations and all the language that's been laid out about why it's a necessary evil, it's something we had to do. And we're learning yet again that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is the root of all evil when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings. Could it be made any clearer by what is said and not said, even during this draft and after this draft, and what's been written about it? It's amazing. And I'm still waiting to find out from Seifert and others whether there's an outside chance that the guy who was apparently making most of the draft decisions anyway might end up with the combo platter job of head coach and general manager as well. Seifert is in the house. Questions for him at 64686. That's the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. And if you have doesn't have to just be questions. It could be observations, could be savagery, whatever works for you. Let us know.
The Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks. It is our national cash contest. First keyword of the day is grand. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword grand.
Is in studio. Welcome back to the program. Appreciate you coming in. Been a while since you've been in.
You've redecorated since I've been in last. It's
special, isn't it?
It is. It is. I would think that they would have, nothing but the best for you and yours. And I just saw Chad Abbott today at the Vikings, and so he didn't even mention this. So it was a big surprise to me when I walked in.
Well, we don't want to brag about these sorts of things. Just, quietly go about our business.
Make move the ball down the field.
Because radio, we're learning, has become more and more visual. Who knew that it would be visual? But it is. And that's why we got these big boards behind us. Although, Guardsy, do you have like a button, like a remote over there where you can click something that will then give us revolving visuals behind us.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just thinking about it. I wish I had like a Kevin Seifert picture I could put up there right now.
Are they working on that?
I assume
somebody
that's
has
the
the goal.
button.
Well, because the other day it was jarring because it was PA.
Yes.
For a while on one of the screens, and it was you interviewing PJ and the other one.
Yep, and then it flipped, and like Sinekin was there. And
we were not represented. No big surprise there. We're used to that. But
well, it's hard to continue with the face for radio cliche when they if they start putting pictures on the wall.
Very, very true. Do you have any particular anti-basketball or hockey biases? Do you want to get in on the? There's been a big battle over the years, especially it's like this last year because Johnny Athletic has been the number one instigator, a troller on trying to get the hockey community going.
Do
you weigh in? Do you weigh in on any of this, or do you stay out of it?
No, and I actually finally, after 20 some years living here, I finally brought myself to admit publicly, because I was just talking to my boss about this the other day, out of fear that they might assign me to cover some of the Wild playoff if it continues on, that I'm absolutely intimidated by the hockey community.
Really?
I did not grow up with hockey. I grew up on the East Coast. We got a minor league team towards the end of the time that I lived in Virginia, but I, to this day, have a mental block about understanding hockey. I know that anywhere, like more than any other place in the country, you can't fake hockey knowledge or hockey insight here. I would be afraid to even deliver a basic game story to ESPN based on a hockey game that I covered. So I don't dislike it. I'm just intimidated by it, and therefore, by default, I'm on the basketball side.
You could acknowledge that and just write about the people, write about, the human side of the drama.
If ESPN happens to send me, I think it's probably going to be for some meat and potatoes game coverage, and I would, if it ever comes to that, not that I'm saying don't read it, but don't read it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure Russo would give you some guidance.
I just have a mental block. Like when I was,
know about the blue line?
Well, I know there's one there, but I couldn't tell you how to use it to your advantage or not. I was just telling my boss that. I was like, I don't even know that I could fully articulate the point of the blue line.
That's honest of you, at least, I guess. But I think you go in with the right attitude. I mean, you'd ask the right questions, and you'd be guided.
But you have to, if you're asking questions that reveal a complete lack of insight, then I'm not sure that the people answering them are going to give you the best answers.
All right. If you're ranking stories out of the Vikings draft / trade weekend, what's at the top of the Kevin Seifert list that transpired? What did you find the most compelling or interesting that you think fans should pay attention to?
Yeah, I thought that the Grenard trade was sort of, I know it's not a draft thing per se, but the Grenard trade was sort of a capstone of what it was a very clear strategy throughout the offseason to prioritize getting their finances in order and quickly, and not trying to do it over multiple years, and not trying to piecemeal it or take some from here and give it to there. This was just a pretty significant slash from where they were at, which was very high before.
Did you write as $100 million down from a year ago?
Yeah, and that got Patrick Royce all fired up because the Twins get ripped for bringing their payroll down by 10. But it's a little, obviously apples and oranges, football and baseball, in terms of how the finances work. They were very high last year as a result of all the free agents they signed. And so coming down $100 million sounds like a lot, and it does bring them near the bottom from near the top, but you have to spend a certain amount over a 4-year period anyway. So I hope people aren't taking that suddenly the Wilfs decided to go cheap. And the interesting thing is Rob Brzezinski felt compelled to bring that up and even say that, hey, this
he volunteered it, right?
Yeah, and this is not exact. And I'd been asking around about it and had written it a couple weeks ago, but the fact that he that was what he felt was appropriate to say at the time, and it was, just so that people understood that this was not like the Wilfs are out of money and they're trying to bleed the organization or something, we've seen before in this town and with this team, even with different ownership. And so that to me, was the overall, that was a perfect capstone to what the whole off season has been. And I thought, obviously the decision and the significant risk they took with Caleb Banks in the first round was sort of 1B.
Okay, so let's stay with the trade for a minute and try to examine a couple parts of it. A lot of what's been written, and I'm not necessarily saying you in this case, the overarching theme seems to be heading very close to, well, Vikings had a big mess on their hands, so they brought Rob Brzezinski in the organization and said, you clean it all up. Now, I may or may not accept that, but here's what does bug me about it. As somebody who's certainly been critical of Kwesi for all the obvious reasons regarding the draft, the part of the mess one would assume would be the free agency money spent last year along especially the defensive line that didn't pay off, correct?
Yes.
And what bugs me about this is the implication again seems to be that, well, that's on Kwesi. That was part of the irresponsible stuff that this team was doing. I refuse to believe that he made either of those big signings without being pushed and prodded, frankly, by people who run this football team in every real way, the head coach and the defensive coordinator. We can't, if we're being fair, we can't leave that out, can we, when it comes to, quote unquote, cleaning up the mess?
No, like, I mean, nobody does anything in a vacuum in and of itself. And I don't remember anybody even behind the scenes last year when they signed Hargrave and Jonathan Allen saying, well, I don't think
be careful.
We shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have done that. And so, but I ultimately, like, part of me totally accepts what you're saying. And part of me would say that those decisions would look a lot different and they might have had different outcomes had the quarterback, position been better. And like those, once it was determined that you're in a different spot than you hoped or thought you were going to be at quarterback, then maybe those two guys are less valuable to your future and had, and it doesn't necessarily have to be JJ. If it was Carson Wentz who caught fire or whoever, if they had better quarterback play and had made the playoffs and then gone into this year, with at least a midterm plan at quarterback that was pretty clear, then all of that could be different. But and there's no doubt that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah doesn't have the sole responsibility for those picks.
I'll try this on you. I tried it yesterday on Alec, and I didn't get very far. I think I got a little ways, not very far. Well, I don't know. He may just not have agreed.
Yeah,
which is legal too.
Yeah.
I think in the minority here among media outlets, and I don't cover the team like you guys do, but I'm not. The whole Grenard thing doesn't sit well with me, even with what I know, the connection to the financial part of this thing. And the fact that he was probably asking for a ridiculous amount of money above and beyond what maybe most teams, well, maybe other than the Eagles, were willing to give him. But here's the piece I don't understand. I feel like the way the Vikings conducted themselves through this whole period is they gave him a greater amount of control and greater leverage than I think he had. I think the Vikings had all of the leverage to say, unless you're going to tell me they didn't want to pay him what they were paying him, to say, we've got you under contract for, is it 2 more years?
Yeah.
We'll see in camp.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to come to camp, and if you really think you want to sit out the whole year, God bless you. But we'll see, because nobody does that anymore anyway. I thought the Vikings had a lot more leverage than the way they played it, by... Well, he doesn't want to be here, so we got to find somebody who'll do it. And then to end up getting as little in return as I thought they did. Not even the Eagles' better third-round choice of the 2 third-rounders that the Eagles had in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think they made a conscious decision not to exercise that leverage. And whether that was for, like, locker room, drama, or trying to avoid... He is a good guy, and I don't think he would have, like, been... we used to say in the papers,
right.
I don't think he would have been in the media or on his own social media ripping the team or complaining. And they have a pretty good relationship with his agent. And so I don't think the agent it wouldn't have turned into a public situation. But I think, I think that the way the Vikings kind of decided not to use that leverage indicates to me that they felt pretty strongly that he he would not have liked that, and it would have been an insult. Whether you agree with or whether we think it's an insult, that you would be insulting one of your best players and that's not their formula for having a winning locker room. And we can debate whether that is overdoing it or not, but I think that's what it came down to, that he doesn't want to be here on this contract, and we are not in a position, or we've made a judgment call, because I did ask that. I was like, why couldn't you just pay that contract? And Brzezinski's, I think it was a 4-year, $100 million extension. And Brzezinski's answer was that, we've already sort of spent our wad in the past couple of years, and this was the commitment we made this offseason to get that straight, and the bills come due. And my response, you could easily have a response back saying, like, look, this is not like just some random player, some guy that, is all selfish and all about himself. Like, this is a core player and a team captain, and but
raving about him, 3 weeks ago.
And I think I don't think there's even any hard feelings now. Like, I think, and you could certainly make the objective, clinical analysis that I'm sure has already been made on the show about the Dallas Turner being there, and they're not, that the cupboard's not empty, and he's going to be 29 and those sort of things. But it's not what you always see a team that's planning to win in a given year do. But I think that they probably place more value on, locker room chemistry and team, continuity and that sort of thing than maybe some other teams might have.
And they said it. One of them said, I think it was Rob, they're not a better team.
Yeah,
going this route.
They're not celebrating.
There's no question about that.
Right.
I think about all these moves though, because they're big decisions. Even going all the way back to the decision, we're gonna bring Kyler in. Which way you go, who you pick there, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, it would have really been cool to have your permanent general manager in place to make these sorts of pronouncements and calculations rather than the guy that, I don't know, you tell me, might end up being the guy, but we're told he doesn't have any advantage, at least so far. That's counterintuitive to me as well. These are all big decisions.
Yeah, and that's
they have ramifications that go on for a while. The new guy's going to inherit a lot of this stuff.
And we've talked about that from the very beginning, and this is why I have probably pounded it too much, but like, this is one of the more unusual team building periods in recent NFL history for any team, because the GMs work all year round, of course, but go time for GMs is February, March, April. Like, that's that's where Rob Brzezinski looks like he's 10 years. Oh, I shouldn't even say this, but and I'm joking sort of, but like he's like a president.
Aged 10 years.
Yeah, when the president, he gets to the end of the 10 years. General managers at the end of the draft always look like they've just like
been through the meat grinder,
literally. Mm-hmm. And so and that's why NFL teams almost never do this. We've occasionally seen times when the owner finally has it after the draft or during the draft process. He decides like, I'm not going forward with this guy. And they fire him right after the draft, and then you replace somebody. But you've never really had this sort of temporary type interim situation in the modern NFL team building that I could find. And you could look at it two ways. You could say he's going to inherit a quarterback he didn't have anything to do with, and he's going to inherit a draft that he had nothing to do with. I will say, and I wrote this today, that relative to what usually when you hire a general manager, the organization is a mess. Mm-hmm. Like, the roster is a mess. The coaching staff is usually, sometimes brand new, sometimes very close to being fired itself. And you're starting from ground zero. Maybe you have the number 1 pick. Maybe you have a top 5 pick, and you're looking for a new court. All this. The next general manager, whether it's Rob or whoever, is going to inherit a much better financial, a situation, as we've pointed out. And also, we can talk about how good the roster is, but it's much stronger than what you normally inherit when you're a general manager that's walking in, because the general manager usually gets fired because the roster has disintegrated to a point where it's a mess. And so, so like, we could look at it from the idea of like, it's really weird to inherit what the next guy's going to inherit, but at least what he's inheriting is not as weak as what you normally inherit when you get hired.
That's
so
true.
You can look at it both ways.
We can, but we have no idea whether the number 1 pick is going to be the steal of the century on the basis of his talent, or a disaster having 3 or 4 more surgeries.
Yeah.
And that's a big move. That's a big pick. And even whether the money saved is going to be, in this case, those decisions, they were wisely saved, or how much you might end up missing
or where they have
Bernard,
done
or
a
whatever the case may
different
be.
way of saving the money. Yep, no doubt.
This is an interesting theory. I'll run this by you, see what you think of it. This is from 651 guy. The Vikings are so damn soft, sick of the soy boy culture. Soy boy culture. Collaborative cohesiveness doesn't win championships until we get some tough, hard-nosed, gritty culture. We will continue to be losers. That guy wanted us to hire Jim Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh and is Bill Parcells available to be the general manager?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the soy boy. Are we accused of having the soy boy culture? Well, it's at the collaborative stuff, and we speak this
well, it's just
language
like
that makes us feel
it's
good.
the classic pendulum, because before was Spielman, at the end of Spielman Zimmer, it was too fear based and too rigid and cold of a place to work. We need these guys to come in and love coming to work and love the people they're working around and all that, and then it doesn't immediately lead to Super Bowl. So now the desire, at least externally, is to move back to a military style situation. And so I get that. I get the idea that if a certain approach isn't working, then
the pendulum
change it. Like, to me, like they're like whatever you want to say about the working atmosphere of TCO Performance Center, like that's at least out of the top 10 of reasons for me as to why they haven't won a Super Bowl in the past 4 years.
Well, we don't know that. How do we know? Is it possible that's part of it? Are we too? Well, somebody put it this way: are we more worried about player surveys and getting patted on the back for, hey, you walk in the door and
I'd argue, like, how does that hurt them? Like, how does that hold them back from?
The question is whether that's the emphasis, whether there's more concern about that and not about the hard, conversations, holding players accountable, holding coaches accountable, frankly. If that's where the emphasis is, I think.
Okay. I mean, I would say Grenard would maybe fall into that category.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'd find a ton of other examples, but I get it. Like, I'll just, my like global theory of the Vikings over the past 5 years is that when they hired Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the number one, building goal for them was to transition at quarterback.
Yes.
And everything they were building towards and riding, on was their ability to do that, and they did not accomplish that in the time frame that they thought they would. Kwesi is now gone, a big part of the reason for that, not the only reason, and now they're working to scrambling, maybe is the word, or whatever you want to call it, to adjust to that outcome and try to either pivot or have more patience. In either way, like, if that had happened, if that quarterback transition had happened more smoothly, all the other things we're talking about would be less topical, in my opinion.
The number one pick, it's a fascinating example of the dynamics that are involved in making this kind of decision, because it's stating the obvious to say, if you're drafting where the Vikings were drafting and you think you have a chance to quote unquote hit a home run, there's always going to be a gamble associated with that, whether you project something out of that player that other people don't, or maybe he's had a discipline issue, or maybe he's got an injury. That's automatic. The key question that keeps coming up to me is, because in theory, I want to love it. I've said this several times because I am a meat and potatoes guy. I like I like addressing the line of scrimmage, which is exactly what this individual at his best is supposed to represent, right? I love that. And I like swinging for the fences. I do like it. The obvious question is, could this team, in other words, if this team had greater draft equity, as opposed to all the charts you guys have all done about the number of draft picks we have as regular players compared to any of the best teams in the league, and just being an embarrassment, that it's harder to justify this team doing it now. The old, we got to hit. Yeah, it's tempting to take the guy who might be a home run hitter, but we got to get doubles, man. If we strike out again, given how much we've struck out before, that also puts us further behind the eight ball. So speak to that aspect of it. Not whether what they did isn't defensible, but whether it's harder to justify on the basis of that recent history.
So I would look at their whole draft as, the swing for the fence at 18, and then the rest of the draft potentially being doubles. And so you could look at at it in that direction. Even going for fullback in the fifth, on day 3, some would say like that's not, you're not winning the Super Bowl based on that, but you are getting a good player at a position that you actually use. And so and that's just one example, but I think I do think there were a lot of attempts at doubles after the first round, and then one swing for the fence, and in part because when you get down in this draft, when you got down to that point, you were potentially, is a double good enough at that point at 18, or do you if you have a chance at a potential blue chip, is that the right place to take the risk? And I don't mind the risk. I just wonder, and this is only contained in the medical reports that are confidential, and the Vikings doctors, just as, Dr. Barreiro and Dr. Seifert, a big guy like that with 3 different times when the bone broke. That's sort of
2 surgeries.
Yeah. 2 surgeries, and that's like the definition of chronic. And so you wonder what did they find that doesn't seem to be the case from the outside. And so it's not, to me, I don't mind taking the risk. I just wonder what could the
we know the answer.
Assessment be? Well, yeah,
we know the
best
answer.
doctors in the world.
We have that, of course, but we got 2 strong ass personalities, obviously, who are constantly whispering, "This is the guy. I can make this work. You got to do it." And that's part of what scares me about not having a full-time, locked-in-place general manager, for better or for worse.
And that's the part where Rob was brought in to be the guardrail, and it's fair for people to say, did he guardrail in this situation? And that's why I think, the whole thing is pivoting on, did their doctor make the right projection based on a guy who's broken
a lot of pressure?
And it comes down to that. And I don't blame them for trusting what he obviously told them, which was it's okay. Things are going to be okay. And it might end up being that way, but that is a super scary and only partially controllable risk to take in the first round.
All right, let's get a break in. Lots of good texts are coming in. We'll talk a little more about several of the other draft choices, maybe what else Seifert saw in the NFC North. Don't forget at 4 o'clock, top of the 4 o'clock hour, Wes Walls to talk Game 5, Wild and Stars tonight on the Fan. By the way, I'm reminded, I think this might be one of Fallness's burner accounts, claiming that the extended pregame does start at 6:30. Puck drops 7:10, and Wild fan line after the game. That all sounds about right. In fact, I would say it should have been required every game, to be honest with you. But now we're at the pivotal Game 5, so a lot of good hockey coverage tonight on the Fan. Seifert back for one more quickie segment before we chat hockey with Wes Walls at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. Johnny Athletic will join at 5:30. Among once we get past round 1, who intrigues you the most, or who do you say, oh, this might have a chance to stick? Somebody who can be very helpful.
I think the safety they took from Miami, Jacoby Thomas, is that's a Brian Flores special right there. And I know you probably, the last thing you want to hear is more how great of a scout Brian Flores is, but it's as much about is a player capable of doing the things that he wants him to do. And it seemed they even ran some of Flores' stuff at Miami. Coincidentally, they had studied what Flores does in terms of having guys in the line of scrimmage, and this guy has a lot of the skills that you would want from a safety that plays in the floor scheme in terms of being, certainly capable in coverage, but really, really instinctive in blitzing, really instinctive in terms of forcing turnovers, a lot of high energy stuff. And so, if you just think about, I don't know if it's like a week one kind of thing, but you look at him and you say like and the assumption of Brian Flores being here for a good long while, still, you look at him being that's a guy who's potentially going to make a relatively significant impact outside of the first. I do think that the second round pick, Orange, the big citrus, is going to, like, I'm not saying that's a week one starting thing either, but when you're a nose tackle, like that's like, it's basically big, be big and play over the center and make it difficult for the center to do what he's can do. So I think he's got a real chance to be part of an early season rotation. And eventually they're starting kind of nose tackle.
Should the average fan pay any attention to the quote unquote report cards, the consensus? I think you allude to this via X. Is pretty universal, I think, on the draft overall that this is not grading out as a great draft. Your guy Kuiper, I think he gave him a C, and I get it. It's one man's opinion, but I feel like that's been more this time around. There's been more of that than raving about the entire mix. Yeah,
and I think a lot of it. Frankly, just from a workflow standpoint, I would imagine that people start working on those grades after the first round, and there's no way that
goes back to the gamble.
There's not a single draft person who that are at least the ones who are putting out grades that are being pulled into those consolidated grade point averages would have had Caleb Banks being somebody that they thought would be a smart pick in the top 20, and so I'm sure that the Vikings overall grade is pushed down pretty hard, in the days following the draft because of where they took Caleb Banks, and then. If there was a double, if they took Dylan Thieneman at 18, the safety from Oregon that everyone thought they were going to take, and then they had the exact same draft, I would bet that the grade would be much better. And so a lot of that's just, preconceived notions and getting, and having the first round be an outsized point. But not everybody is drafting a fullback, and maybe that's part of it too. But for the most part, I think it was just based on the first round pick and that's just, part of the good thing is that the grades don't count. Yeah. We'll be able to look back on it next year and have a much better idea if that was a deserved grade or not. But I think that's what that was about.
Tell me about Jennings. We're the former Niners wide receiver. We're taking a look at.
Yeah, I mean they didn't draft a receiver, so really when you look at their depth chart, like that was certainly a need. And you say it's crazy to say you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and that's a need. But we saw what happened last year. They felt like they had to go out and trade for Adam Thielen, and that was even with Jalen Naylor on the roster, and he no longer is after signing with the Raiders. So I think that it was pretty clear that if they didn't draft somebody, even if they did, they might consider a post-draft free agent, and he's the first one up. And so that we're past the point of that impacting their compensatory formula if that becomes an issue next year, and so that it wouldn't count against that. And so we'll see if they end up being able to work out a deal. It seems likely, but we'll see.
So the next step is the GM search?
Yeah, and that's this. I would imagine they'll start this week. And I think they'll have to have some internal discussions with and about Rob Brzezinski first and see if he's going to be part of that or not.
So you don't think there's any indication you've been given that the will say they bring Rob in and say, you know what? We didn't think we were going to do it this way, but we liked what you did. We liked the way you commanded the huddle. We liked the fact that you saved us $100 million. We think you helped us get out of salary cap hell, so we're fine with this. Is there any chance that could happen?
I mean, ultimately they might, but they can't, based on the Rooney Rule situation. They have to conduct a inclusive search with at least two diverse candidates from outside the organization. They can have more than that, but it has to be at least two. Yeah. And so maybe they say that to.
Do you have any indication of that yet? That's the way they may be leaning.
I don't think they are leaning that way, but I also don't think they've had a lot of discussions about it either. I think everybody was draft. Right. So they do have a consultant that they've hired to help them come up with the list of outside candidates. And I think that's being compiled now. And I would imagine they'll get to interviews. There's no like rush from a competitive standpoint because nobody else, at least at this moment, has an opening at GM. And so like, it's not like they have to rush to get, the competitive, but they also like the longer you wait, the longer the transition and adjustment, is pushed back. And so I think they're wanting to do it quickly, but not in a rush.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay,
if you do want to learn something about hockey, once you get back in your car, you want to put on FM 100.3, listen to Wes Walls. The guy knows the game.
He does. I'm
and
sure
is very good at dummying it down if necessary, too, for me and other people, too. So, and yet the hardcores love him, too.
Okay, that's good to know.
And just in case, you might get a good lesson
up?
right away.
Okay, I'll go in the car
About 5 minutes from now. That's exactly it. Thanks, man.
Yes.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. As I mentioned, some puck talk coming up. Johnny Athletic to get the puck community going. That's scheduled for 5:30.